We're going to dive into, like I said, at the top, all things Washington football team, Grant's projections for the key players. And we'll start right at the top. The big new quarterback acquisition, Ryan Fitzpatrick signs a 1-year, $10 million deal. The gunslinger has arrived. He's arguably my favorite value QB in fantasy right now. But I'd love to get your take. How has he looked since joining the team? And what are kind of your expectations for him and Washington with him leading the show?
Yeah, I think as people should probably expect with a new quarterback and a new offense in the infancy of training camp, the reports out of camp have been up and down, but that is going to happen, and I don't really react too much to practice reports or how guys look in July at the team facility. Having said that, they've got a really good situation for him, I think, on offense. They've got an offensive line they've rebuilt with 3 new starters, including at left tackle and at right tackle. Assuming that line is what they think it is, Charles Leno coming over from the Bears where he once played in a Pro Bowl. They drafted Sam Cosmi at right tackle out of Texas. He's going to play at some point. Their left tackle starter a year ago, Cornelius Lucas, who had a good season, is getting kicked over. I think they'll be able to protect Ryan Fitzpatrick behind a line anchored by All-Pro Brandon Scherff, who's back on a 1-year franchise tag. And then the big story really is Wolf, I mean, they've given him some talent to throw the ball to finally. Yeah. Terry McLaurin's one of the most underrated players in the league. He is a wide receiver 1, in fantasy and reality, whatever you want to say. But on top of that, they haven't had much else. And now you've got Antonio Gibson in the backfield coming into year 2, who's going to be targeted more often in the passing game, a college wide receiver. They bring back J.D. McKissick, who caught 80 passes last year. I think his numbers will go way down as a pass catcher without Alex Smith, but he's a nice safety valve. Logan Thomas returns for his second season in Washington after a breakthrough last season where he had great counting stats. I mean, some of the best numbers among tight ends in the league in terms of, percentage of routes run and targets and catches. And on top of all of that, they brought in Curtis Samuel from Carolina, who's going to get a lot of touches and jet action, who's going to be their second leading wide receiver. They have Adam Humphries now in the slot who's going to get looks. They drafted De'Ami Brown in the 3rd round. So I think Ryan Fitzpatrick's in a really good spot. He actually was quoted about a week ago as saying this is the best situation he has ever had as the guy in an offense. And he's going to push the ball down in a way that Alex Smith did not, Dwayne Haskins did not. Last year, they were very much a horizontal passing game. So that's good news for McLaurin owners. That's good news for people that are going to invest and get some shares in probably Samuel and anybody else in this wide receiver group as well.
Absolutely. I agree with all that assessment. I didn't even know the line improvements as much, looking at the weaponry on top of that too. It's a great setup for him. That's great. He thinks it is as well. And last year, he, with a less ideal setup with the Dolphins, over 70% of his starts the last couple of seasons with them have been top 12 quarterback numbers. So you give him this better setup. And if Scott Turner's offense resembles Norv Turner, historically always pushed that ball deep. We didn't see much of it under Alex Smith, but there could be a fantasy factory here with the Washington football team. I love it. Now they are labeling it though an open competition between him and Taylor Heineke. Do you think that's just in name only, or is there actually a chance that Taylor Heineke could push him for the starting job this year?
It's funny you asked that. Well, if I actually asked Ron Rivera the same question when he was on my show on 106.7 The Fan about a week ago at the start of camp, and he dodged it like you're dodging a dodgeball in high school gym. Having said that, it's in name only. I don't really believe this is a competition for 2 reasons. Number one, they brought Fitzpatrick in to start. I'd imagine they told him he was going to start. He makes about 10 times what Taylor Heineke does. I'd love to tell you football's a meritocracy, but that's somewhat telling. And then on top of all of that, the Heineke buzz around here is unbelievable, and fans love the guy because he had a big playoff game against Tampa in a losing effort, and he had a decent 4th quarter in his only other performance off the bench against Carolina in December. So the assumption is that he's, the next Kurt Warner who comes from nowhere to be great. And I just don't think that's realistic. I think that there's a reason he was out of football halfway through last season. Ryan Fitzpatrick, who in reality is a different conversation than in fantasy. I'm with you. I think he'll be a nice play. I'm not convinced, that he is more than just a quick stopgap for Washington in real life, but he's better than Taylor Heineke is. I can tell you that. And I think he's going to be their starter at the beginning of the year. And if he plays well enough, he'll keep that job.
Like it. And Vegas has set his line at 3,900 and a half yards and 23 touchdowns. Do you like the over, the under on those? You think it's a fair projection? What are your thoughts?
I really like the projection, frankly. So here's my question. I guess you could hypothetically say this about any quarterback or any team. You know, I think he'll need to play in 15 or more games to get to those numbers. I'm just not sold on that. Like, to me, Fitz makes a lot of sense on weeks where, you know, number one, that he's going to be on the field based on both health and did he have a terrible game last week, which always seems to come with him. And then number two, who the matchup is. You know, he to me is like a matchup quarterback in fantasy. He may have 70% of the time that he's in the top. The other 30% is pretty ugly, oftentimes. Having said that, I guess I would take the under because I have kind of been saying to whoever would listen all offseason, I just find it hard to believe he's going to start the full year. You know, at his age, still running around like he does. He takes shots, man, and I think he gets banged up. If you look at the last couple of years where he's been better, I think a lot of that has to do with usage in some way. I mean, he would come off the bench, outperform Tua handily in Miami, and then they'd put him right back on the bench and go back to Tua. You know, would he have, if you stretched him out over the course of the long season, kind of regressed to the mean? I think he probably would have. So whether it's performance or health, I think he's going to miss a few games. And for that reason, I'd go under. But I'll tell you, they base those numbers on, you know, him playing the full year, 17 games. And I think if he plays all 17 games, he'll blow past that number. I would be really surprised if he was under that in all 17 games. I think that would be really, really difficult.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point that he'll smash those if we get full 17 of Fitz, but health and performance concerns might lessen the amount of games we get from him. Intriguing indeed. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.